Once you've made a graph and added your trend line, we want to think about what this actually tells us. What is the trend over time? And also, how strong of a trend do we have? Is our MPA really changing over time, and by how much? So there are a few things we can look at in our data to think about this. First of all, let's look at the slope of the line. Is it trending upwards or downwards, or is it more flat? You can of course see this visually by looking at what direction the line points, but you can also see by looking at the equation for the line, which we have right here. So the slope of the line is this first number right before where it says month. And if it is a positive number, this factor is increasing over time, and if it's negative, it's decreasing. So this is a negative number, negative 0.103, and you can see that the line is indeed going down over time. The value also tells us how steep the line is. A bigger number is a bigger slope or a more large increase or decrease, and smaller numbers are more flat and more gradual. So does the factor that you graphed have a large slope, or is the change over time smaller? Right here, 0.103 is our slope. That is a relatively small number for sure, so the change that we do see is pretty gradual. Next, we can think about how well our data fits to this line. Is our data really varied, or does it stick close to our line of best fit? To do that, we look at the R-squared value you can see on the very bottom. This is a scale of 0 to 1, so 0 means that none of the data fits the line at all, and it's more random. And 1 would be if our data fits exactly along the line and we had a perfect steady trend. So for some of our data, the variation can be really high just by the nature of the kind of data we're collecting. Ecological data, like fish populations, for example, can be affected by so many factors: ocean conditions, where you anchored that day, water clarity, and more. That having high variation is pretty given and also normal. It's not necessarily a bad thing, and it doesn't mean your data is wrong or that you don't actually have a trend. It's still good to think about though. If the variation is really high and the slope is also very small, you might have to weigh how likely it is you think the trend is real or significant. So here R-squared is 0.05. So that is a relatively small number, but it's not 0, so there is some of this can be explained by this downward trend here. It'll be up to you to think through these factors as you're looking at your data and decide what trends you think are happening. Go ahead and take a look at the slope of your line and the R-squared value for your data and answer the questions on the next slide.